So tell me about this movie, Miss Wolf. I don't have a lot of time. I'm probably the busiest man in Hollywood, in fact. Suzanne, call Eddie Murphy and tell him how busy I am. Okay, sugar, let's hear it.
Okay, the stars are these 4 outcasts, and they're ninjas.
Ninjas are like samurai, right? So that's like the Magnificent Seven, but there's 4? Suzanne, give me Steve McQueen, Eli Wallach, Charles Bronson, James Coburn. Some of them might be dead. If they are, give me Robert Vaughn.
Well, these ninjas are a little different. For one thing, they're turtles. So.
Turtles? Turtles? You want me to make a movie where the actors are turtles? Hold on a sec. Marty, it's Alan. Help me out here. Was Gary Cooper a turtle? No? How about Richard Gere? Is he a turtle? No? Just checking, Marty. See you at the Polo Lounge. We'll talk prostates. That's a funny thing, Miss Wolf. No big stars are turtles. So I can make this movie, but my wife, my kids, they wind up in the poorhouse. Myself, they put me in the Laughing Academy.
But these turtles are mutants.
I don't make movies about religion.
And they have special powers and weapons like swords and nunchucks.
Young lady, I didn't get where I am to have you use language like that in my office, 3 inches from a framed picture of my mother. She should rest in heaven.
Oh, I'm so sorry. She's dead.
Actually, she's in Arizona. I mean, eventually.
The thing is, I really believe these Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles could really be the next big thing.
Young lady, I have one word for you. No go. Teenage Nunchuck Methodist Turtles are a... Suzanne, how many words is no go? Okay, I have 2 words for you.
You're going to be sorry, Mr. Goldmeyer. There's going to be toys and live tours and movies and television and flashlights and underpants and backpacks. And, well, you get the picture. And that's our show today, how one idea hatched by 2 very different young men here in New England started a 30-year run that's still running. And now the guy who got the Power Rangers hooked on morphin', Colin McEnroe.
I said to Tommy, try some. Just try some. Try some morphine. All right, so, and I feel bad about that now for a whole bunch of different reasons. It just didn't end that well. All right, so we're not talking about the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers here. We're talking about something considerably more durable than the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. In fact, well, no, we'll get into that later. We're talking about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, who are as so fresh and 30 years after their inception that I was at a multiplex last night watching Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles because they have a movie out right now. But they started back in 1984. They started here in New England. Some of their genesis, as you will hear, took place, I believe, in kind of the northwest corner of Connecticut, but they're really kind of more of a Northampton, Amherst concept. And let me tell you some of the people that you're going to meet as we go along here today. Well, we couldn't do a show like this without having at least one culture dog. That's what is called a minion, I think. So Sam Hatch, culture correspondent and film critic, otherwise known as one of 2 culture dogs. You can hear him every Sunday night on WWUH. And he's here on this show an awful lot, too. Randall Lobb is the writer and director of the documentary Turtle Power, the definitive history of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And I would like to emphasize the word definitive. No question that you have ever had about any aspect of the genesis and development of all the various manifestations of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is overlooked in this or underexplored. It's very definitive. Jim Lawson is a comic artist who worked on the original TMNT. I'm going to start saying that now. Comic series. He's based in Northampton. And joining us here on the phone here at the beginning is Kevin Eastman. Kevin Eastman is one of those 2 young men who developed this remarkably durable idea, this franchise, I don't know what else to call it, way back in the mid-1980s. So Kevin Eastman, we're going to start with you. And, you know, the intro that we just heard is probably something that resonates a little bit with you now that you've really had decades of experience, decades of exposure to the way that mass culture really is developed. You know, there are so few original ideas, so many things that you see at the movie theater look a lot like the last thing that you saw at the movie theater. You kind of know how things are going to go. So Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was an outlandishly original idea, and I assume one of the reasons for that is you weren't in Hollywood and you weren't trying to have a huge mass market success. Am I correct about that?
Oh, all that and then some, that's for sure. I mean, I don't think I could have been further away from Hollywood except in front of my TV or the local movie theater. But yeah, I grew up in a very small town in Maine, read Jack Kirby comics. He's my hero, one of my biggest inspirations. And when I met Peter Laird, and we mind melted and bonded over Kirby and our love of all things pop culture, I guess, comic books mainly, and just had a lot of similarities and tastes that when we came up with the idea of the Turtles, it was just something that really started as a joke. Came out of a couple of guys being just big geeks and came from big hearts and wanting to be cartoonists, and probably never thought would actually see that come true. And when we came up with the Turtles, we sort of put everything that we loved about comics and pop culture at that time into it, and assuming nobody's going to read it but us and maybe some of our family members that would give copies to. But yeah, it was pretty much came from the inside out, I guess.
Towards the end of Randall Lobb's movie, your partner in Turtledom, Mr. Laird, is talking about how he booted the comics back up, I think sometime around 2001, and that people would buy the comics and look at them, and he, Peter Laird, said that he would often hear from people, I don't like it as much as the original kind of Eastman and Laird Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And then he, Peter Laird, says in this documentary, there's something about the blend of our two sensibilities, maybe that was intrinsic to this. That he doesn't, I don't think, use Rodgers and Hammerstein, but I will. I mean, that you got Rodgers, you got Hammerstein. Well, that's pretty obvious. You need words, you need music, but there's also sort of differences in temperament that somehow or other he thinks maybe came out in the original concept here. And is there any way you can sketch that out more? I mean, are there aspects of your two respective personalities that were essential to create this thing?
Oh, in so many ways. I mean, the most awesome Peter Laird was just, he was a bit older than I am, still is actually, and he was much more fine-tuned in his art style. I mean, he could draw so much better than I could on so many things, and he was so much better read. I mean, he read lots of novels and things like that. I was still, I couldn't get my nose out of comic books for the most part. And I was, but both of us had the same passion, and I had sort of, I leaned really heavily towards this Jack Kirby dynamic style in my layouts and some of my pacing and some of the story stylings that I did. And it really was just a nice combination of, we played off each other's strengths. We made sure that we blended each other's art styles on every single page, and, right down to, penciling the whole issue together, passing the pages back and forth, so there was some drawing from both of us on each page, and we wouldn't start inking it until we finished, penciling the whole issue. Then we'd sort of pass it back and forth again. So it was a nice blend of, the best of both of us. And again, I think it was the passion, I guess, comes across and all that, and especially the first, I guess it was 15 or 16 issues, which we call the original series, issues 1 through 11, and then we did these 4 one-shot issues featuring individual turtles. But that was really the heart and soul of how we learned to draw comic books, and we put everything that we loved about comic books into those stories. Because I think the longest story I'd done up until that time was maybe an 8-page story or a 10-page story, and I think Peter might have done about the same. So here we were getting paid to draw comics for the first time. We were living the dream, and we would approach each issue by going like, man, what's the coolest thing we've ever, is it, Planet of the Apes? Is it Star Wars? Is it something we can use as inspiration and take it in that direction? And just we had no editors. We were the bosses. We did everything. We answered the phone. We did the lettering. We did everything. And so nobody could tell us what to do, what not to do. So we just put all the things that we loved about comics into it. And the blend was perfect. It was, really some of the best memories ever for me working with Pete on that original series, and for many years after.
Kevin, I have another member of your original team here. Jim Lawson is here in studio with me. And so, Jim, I'm going to ask you for a second. I mean, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, as I was saying before we went on the air, in the current movie, there's a great moment where I think it's Megan Fox, one of the humans in the movie, says to these 4 beings, so you guys are Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? And one of them says, when you say it that way, it sounds weird. So this is either, the coolest, freshest, most original idea in the world that anybody's having in the mid-1980s, or one of 10 million really, really terrible ideas that people have had. And so did you know right away that it was the former rather than the latter? When they came to you and said Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, did you go, oh, definitely?
No, I don't think I did. But I think that's part of the genius of it is it was so kind of crazy and out there and ridiculous, and I think you had to think about it twice or look at it twice, or there was curiosity. What is that? What could that possibly be?
Well, we are no stranger to startlingly original ideas here at this show. So we had the fascinatingly novel concept of sending somebody out with a microphone into the street and asking them what they think of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I know, crazy, right? Let's see how that goes.
What do you think about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
I think they rock because they're full of fun and they like pizza.
I don't know. I thought they were cool because, like, you know, turtles that were like ninjas. Like, a boring animal is a ninja. Like, what's better than that? I mean,
I don't know anything. I mean, I know the name, but I don't know what they are. I don't know anything about them at all.
I loved that show, and I had all the toys, even like the whole underground sewer.
Well, I've heard of them. I watched some of the show when I was littler. It was good.
I didn't watch it, but I knew of it. I played the video game a lot. It was just like the arcade game, and it was really fantastic, and I loved it.
They're green, and they do karate moves or something. I don't know that much, and they're named after Italian Renaissance artists.
I had t-shirts, I had action figures, and a stuffed Ninja Turtle. Yeah, I got him when I was 2, and he was my favorite stuffed animal. My brother threw him in the pool, and his fur got all wrinkly. Made me pretty sad, but I loved him.
Actually, like the second person or third person sounded really high. All right. So, by the way, as we go along here, 860-275-7266. We have lots of guests to talk to, but we'd be happy to hear from you, too. 860-275-7266. Kevin Eastman, while we have you, I mean, I've been trying to do some deep thinking about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and what they actually were or why they were so successful. And maybe that's a stupid idea. Maybe things are just popular and fun because they're popular and fun. But it does seem like you did catch a couple of waves here. One of them, you know, for want of a better term, was kind of that postmodern idea of something that makes fun of the thing that it loves, right? It's spoofing something and doing it kind of seriously, more or less at the same time. That you know, in all the ways that you loved Jack Kirby, you know, who embodied a certain kind of epic seriousness and beauty in Marvel comic books. So you've got that there, but then these are turtles, you know, and they're kind of goofy too.
Yeah, you know, it's such a, I've talked about it, Pete and I have talked about it for 30 years, and I think we occasionally come close to trying to describe what popular about them or what resonates and why it's resonated, yet again here 30 years later with a whole new group of young kids. But it's, I think I feel like, again, repeating myself, I think the story just came from a great place, a lot of heart and soul in it, and, had some similarities to, there were always, comic book groups of characters. Say the Avengers were mutant characters, and they all, you had the tough one, the more sympathetic one. You had different character relationships. The X-Men, the same thing. You look at comics like the New Mutants, which was very popular around the time that Pete and I were developing the idea. Frank Miller's Daredevil, which is a big inspiration, to us. And I think we just, put this, all that camaraderie, the brotherhood, the father figure, the fact that they're misfits. I think that's why a lot of kids, like comics are like Turtles that feature, misfit characters. I think a lot of times, I know I felt like I was a mutant and a misfit growing up in a small town in Maine because I was the only kid reading comic books and living in this fantasy world. But I think the fact that they're turtles and not, say, black, white, or Asian, I think it can relate to just a lot of different cultures of humans. And they find something in it. They like, Michelangelo as a Joker. They like that. They like Leonardo as a leader. That's always the first question I ask when I'm at shows or doing conventions is, who's your favorite turtle and why? And they're very specific about it, and it really speaks a lot about their own personality. But all in all, they're always all good kids, and they love it, head to toe. And I think that's the coolest thing about this year. I've done more shows than I've ever done. And what I've noticed, what's been so cool is all the kids that grew up on the Turtles, when they were 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, when they started watching it, now have kids of their own, and they'll come up to a signing, and they'll have 1 or 2 items that they've had since childhood that I'll sign this, completely beaten up and read to death, well-loved, I call it, comic book. in some old toy that they still have, and then their child would have, you know, the Halloween costume on, and have some of the new action figures. The fact that it worked and kids related to it the first time and found something in it special and stayed with it all those years, and now it's generational, where, you know, it's captured the minds of, you know, younger kids again today, to me is overwhelming, humbling, mind-blowing, and just beyond cool.
You know, one question that I had for us, and Sam Hatch is here, and he actually brought some memorabilia, which you can sort of air sign. You know, you can like sign that in the air of where you're sitting. And but Sam, you know, for you as somebody who's a real sort of culture observer, one thing that I was wondering about, and I'm just not a good enough culture critic to have a firm opinion on this, but I'm thinking 1984, and I'm thinking the other thing that these guys are is maybe the beginning of an Asian aesthetic that gets bigger and bigger. You know, not that it hadn't happened before, and obviously they owe a little something to the Karate Kid, but really, you know, in the next decade, it really is a lot of very Asian-influenced pop culture, whether we're talking about Pokemon and Pikachu and all that kind of stuff, or I mean, so many different things. Just the real arrival of manga and the arrival of anime, and it's just gone and on, and now it's K-pop, and I'm pretty sure within 10 years, you know, PBS Masterpiece Theater will be Korean. It'll be hosted by Psy or something. But this is, I don't know, Sam, this is kind of a beginning. This has got from the very beginning, it has kind of an Asian, obviously, ninja look to it.
And that period was, there had been a lot of anime shows on television over here, you know, Battle of the Planets and Star Blazers, but that was when the Robotech phase was just starting to creep in, and that was kind of what created a whole generation of anime fans. But at the same time, the ninja aspect is something that should definitely not be overlooked, because the mid-'80s, there was a ninja explosion. Sho Kosugi films all over Cinemax. There was American Ninja and this ninja, that ninja. So yeah, it was that ultimate culmination of those Eastern sensibilities, and yeah, ninjas. I mean, you can't go wrong with those.
You know, the other thing that I wondered about, Jim Lawson, you're the person who really observed this. If this were software instead of a comic book, it would have been kind of open source, at least in the sense that my understanding, watching Randall Lobb's documentary, and we'll be weaving him into this conversation very soon, is that you guys were allowed, it wasn't sort of this incredibly tight brand control. You can only do this. You can only draw this way. It's got to be this certain way. That the people who worked on it originally had a little bit of flexibility to bring individual visions to this. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we were all more or less working together, playing together. You know, all the relationships in the studio, the bunch of guys that worked there, we were all really, really tight. And I think there was a lot of trust there. You know, we all were there for the same reason, for the Turtles. And I think Kevin and Pete felt, I don't know, you know, ask Kevin if he backs me up on this, that you know, some of the duties there, you know, you could dole out the work to different people and know that it was going to be handled correctly and respected, and that you know, we all love the Turtles. So, and
Kevin Eastman, that's an interesting way to work, right? I mean, on the one hand, you can be Walt Disney, and absolutely you can't have Mickey Mouse smoking in one movie or something. You know, you can be Walt Disney and completely, absolutely, although that would be funny, and absolutely control every bit of it. But it sounds like what you wanted, at least initially, or what you wound up with, was a very sort of multi-person creative enterprise where a lot of people could begin to shape some of this.
Yeah, oh, totally. I mean, that was what was so cool, was that, you know, when we met, you know, guys like Jim Lawson and Mike Dooney and Dan Berger, Ryan Brown, Steve Levine, you know, so many of the original core crew, we were fans of their work first. It was like we'd see them at a comic book show, or they'd show us, you know, samples. We got to be friends and fans of their work first. And so when we started expanding a little bit of the Mirage Publishing, we published one of Jim's first projects, Spade Biker, and Michael Dooney's Gizmo, and that kind of stuff. And the more we got to be friends, and, you know, the Turtle universe was expanding, we were already, again, fans of theirs. So when we said, you know, when we said, hey, do you have any ideas for a Turtle story? Or they would come to us with an idea with a Turtle story, we wanted to see them just cut loose and do, you know, anything but having them drink beer and smoking. No, but have them do, you know, have fun with it, and have that freedom to bring in, you know, all their own personal influences and inspirations, and put it into a Turtle story, or put a, you know, that kind of story into the Turtle universe. And a lot of times it would just be a quick, you know, basic outline, and then would watch Jim, who's just the ultimate machine at penciling and so prolific. We'll just watch the pages roll in and just be grinning ear to ear when we see the work that these guys are doing. So, and that was a really exciting time because we had the guys in the studio that were doing the regular Mirage Black and White series. We had a bunch of other guys that were working on the Archie more TV kid-friendly series that was being produced in-house. We had Pete and I were consulting with and working on the animated shows, so we were getting hit with some awesome creative talent all over the Turtle spectrum, if you will. And it was really energizing, draining at times, but it was really energizing and exciting. And we'd often see ideas that these guys would come up with that Pete and I didn't see in the Turtles ourselves, if you will. Like, well, I never thought about that, or never thought about that angle, or that story, or that particular take. And that, then it got our own juices flowing, and the creativity just flowed out of the studio like crazy.
Kevin Eastman, we're going to go to break in just a second here. Let me ask you one thing, though. I mean, it's interesting because obviously you've had the kind of success that everybody who ever worked, particularly in sort of an underground or alternative kind of publication, alternative kind of medium, dreams of, hopes for. I mean, I guess there are some people who don't even want that, but most people do. You've got it. You've had it. You've had really one of the most successful franchises of the last 30 years, if not the. And obviously, therefore, you are, I would imagine, a rather wealthy individual. But I hear in your voice like this was the best time. It almost sounds like before you got all this stuff, as great as it must be to have the success and the money, I almost hear a longing a little bit for 1984.
Oh, for sure, 100%. It was, it's hard to put into words. I mean, in so many ways, because it really was a dynamic. Especially the days that Pete and I were sitting, literally passing pages back and forth. That was just, that's my lifelong, all-time favorite memories. Besides the birth of my son, for example. You know what I mean? It's just one of those things that's just so special. And I miss those days a lot. I miss, brainstorming with Pete, brainstorming with the guys, and I always said that when a fan, or I'm doing a talk at one of the comic conventions or something, and they say, when was the moment when you knew you had a successful run here? You knew you had a success with the Turtles. And to me, it was the time Pete called me up on the phone. I was in Portland, Maine at the time. He had moved down to Connecticut, and we'd just gotten the pre-orders in for Turtles issue 2, and I think it was around 15,000 copies. And Pete had run some numbers. He said, at 15,000 copies, what it costs us to make them, we could make about, after all sales were done and everything, we'd make about $2,000 each. We could pay our rent. We could eat all the macaroni and cheese we want. We could draw comic books for a living. I literally quit the job I had. I moved down to Connecticut, and that was, for me, the ultimate. That was when the dream really came true, that, we got to draw comic books for a living, and with all the blessings and all the things that have happened since, which are just, again, it's such a huge honor, and it's humbling, and I feel unworthy half the time, but it's like, that's probably the best memory I ever have of the Turtles is when I got to draw for a living and work with Pete.
A little bit like hearing your song on the radio for the first time. Kevin Eastman, thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thanks very much for having me.
All right, we're going to take a break. We're going to come back with Randall Law, he made the documentary, and did write it too, about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. We got more Sam Hatch. We got more Jim Lawson. We'll take your phone calls at 860-275-7266. Be the first person to say Cowabunga on WNPR.
When the evil shredder attacks, these turtle boys don't cut them no slack. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Splinter taught them to be ninjas.
Did you guys have a favorite turtle?
Donatella.
I like Mikey. I don't know why. I thought he was really cool. And he was like the fun one, the like goofy one.
I can't tell them apart. I know they have different colors, but I'm colorblind.
Yeah, mine was Raphael.
Yeah, I'd say Michelangelo.
Purple, Donatello.
I was a big fan of the purple one, which was Donatello, I believe, with the staff, and he was the smart one, so I liked him best.
All right. And Wolfie's saying Raphael? I wouldn't have guessed you for a Raphael.
Oh, Raphael guy, yeah.
All right.
Wow.
So here in the studio with us, Jim Lawson, one of the comic artists who worked on the original TMNT comic series based in Northampton. Sam Hatch from the Culture Dogs, and with us on a studio connection is Randall Lobb. He is the writer and director of the documentary Turtle Power, the definitive history of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Randall Lobb, this documentary is clearly a labor of love. You went everywhere that you could go. You talked to everybody that you could talk to about this. I assume that means that, this wasn't some kind of random spin the dial choice. I assume that the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles started out as a very important cultural influence for you. Am I correct about that?
Well, no, you are not correct.
You were going to make a movie about something completely different.
I was trying to make a movie about the Power Rangers that got screwed up with the shells and all that.
Right.
No, I was working with a young cinematographer, and Jim will remember Isaac Elliott Fisher. He's a lifelong Turtle fan.
No,
and
I don't remember.
Yeah, he's plaguing everyone along with me and Mark Hussey. No, I have a business partner, Mark Hussey, and we're small town guys who saw technology that is emerging and has been emerging for 10 years as a way of kind of leveling the playing field from a media perspective. And we knew we were good workers, and we knew we were quality artists as well. And we were looking for some kind of niche project upon which we could work our magic. And we had done a few things with Isaac, and he approached us outside a coffee shop and said, I have a great idea for a documentary. Would you like to help me with it? And he said, I want to do a documentary on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And I said, no way. And my partner at the exact moment said, yeah, that sounds great. And the reason why I said no is it was on my radar because I actually picked up issue 1 in 1984. And I believe it was right around the same week as Marvel's Secret Wars came out. And I looked at that title and I thought, wow, that's crazy. And I thought it was crazy on purpose, not knowing that it was, kind of a grassroots, very independent thing. I thought it was a plan. And I was 19 at the time, and I was thinking, this is to take advantage of the comics boom to try and, hit some young people. And the guy in the shop said, no, Mark Asquith is his name, Silver Snail Comic Shop. He said, no, pick it up and look at it. And I picked it up, and I could see, Frank Miller, Jack Kirby, Cerebus, independent. Like, it was very cool, and it was on my radar from that. But when it transitioned and became this explosion, I was much older than the target market. So what happens is when he suggested this concept, I thought immediately, it'll be fraught with rights issues and all kinds of problems. It'll be a very expensive documentary. But then in the next millisecond, I thought, wait a minute, here's the niche. Here's a group of people who love the Turtles lifelong. They're going to be interested in something we can make. And I totally underestimated how popular and how successful and how awesome the franchise was. I underestimated the number of fans, and I underestimated the franchise in itself. And now I count myself as a Turtle fan in a much deeper way than I anticipated. I'm a fan of Jim. I'm a fan of Peter. I'm a fan of Kevin and Steve and all the people involved personally. So it sounds crazy. Jim may say, how dare you? But I feel like I'm in the same shell that they're in a way now. And I have skin in the game with this pair of creators and the world that has come out from them.
Well, one of the things that you do in the movie is kind of just sort of talk to the people who were just hit by this first wave and who became Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle fans. So I've got one of those here in the studio. Here's Sam Hatch. You were sort of perfectly poised to be a Connecticut-based Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle fan, and I take it you were.
Absolutely. Early on, there was information about it in the Comics Buyer's Guide, which was the variety for comic fans back in the day. And it was just one of those things you saw, and you're like, I have to check this out. And that first issue came out. I think it was only 3,000 printed, and it was a bomb. It was just explosion all over the conventions. You were all over the floor. Everybody was talking about it. The prices shot up. Everybody was looking for a first printing. There was even a guy at one point who was modifying third printings and reselling them as first printings because they were going for up to $150 at the time. They were always, the first comic you would see on the panel behind the dealers at the dealer rooms. And it was nuts. And I remember going to the bookie in East Hartford for my first meeting with Kevin and Peter, and they were doing signings. And it was a very low-key event. Not that many people there, surprisingly, because it was really early on a Saturday. But yeah, I count myself lucky to be part of that, that group, and especially Connecticut. I mean, having Mirage operating out of Connecticut for a while, we had a little bit more access than some of the people out in California.
It was like living in Liverpool.
It was, yeah. The Beatles were, in this case, Turtles. Yeah.
Sam, I'm going to stay with you for a second, but I'm going to explore this with all the other guests. And by the way, if you've got your own Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle story to tell or a question about it, 860-275-7266. You may also tweet us at WNPR Colin. Our tweet master, Greg Hill, is tweeting right back at you right now, WNPR Colin. But so, Sam, there's a thing that happens when something becomes popular that was that existed within a certain subculture before this. And you're describing the subculture, really. In other words, you were reading the Buyer's Guide. You were going to these conventions. You were aware of this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But you weren't a mainstream person at that point.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
You were explicitly a non-mainstream person. So there's a thing that happens when something becomes mainstream that you've loved, which is that obviously it gets altered. It becomes different. And even if it's been popular before, I mean, I was horrified when Disney made Mary Poppins because I loved the books, and the books were nothing like that. I was horrified when Batman and Robin became this terrible, kitschy, campy TV show with Adam West. But so I'm sort of wondering, I mean, obviously there was a grittiness and a kind of, sort of almost post-punk rejection of mainstream culture that was implicit in the original comic book itself. How do you view all the incredibly popular permutations that came after?
A little bit at arm's length, and even listening to some of the man on the street interviews you had conducted. People talking about the purple one and that, and I've got some of the original covers here, and they all have red IM masks and bandanas. So things changed as time went on. And yeah, as a fan, as the TV show came out, the animated series, I watched it, and I was in a band, and we did a cover tune of the theme song at one point. But yeah, almost times you were a little irritated that this thing you held precious and loved dearly was changing and reaching a whole other audience in a different fashion, and they had no knowledge at sometimes of the original comics. And I actually, unfortunately, I sold my original printings to fund a horrible demo tape that my band was making at the time. And I remember...
What was the band called? I want to know the name of the band that cost you your...
You'll be surprised. It's named after a movie. It was called Near Dark.
All right.
And
good movie.
Yeah, see, great. Yeah.
See, Jim feels better about that.
And
at least it was a good movie.
I remember arguing with the woman at the comic book store because she was pointing out in a price guide what they were worth, and she was pointing at the Archie comics that were kind of a spin-off of the television show. And I'm like, no, these are the ones with the zeros after the first digit. So, so there was always that kind of disconnection for me. But still, I watched the cartoons and I loved them. Yeah.
Let's actually hear a little clip from Randall Love's documentary in which two of the people who are helping sort of speed this adaptation. One of them's from a toy company, and really the toy company was, as we learn in the movie, the drivers. Playmates, the toy company, were the drivers in deciding that there actually had to be some kind of television adaptation in order to make the toys appetizing and marketable. So you hear also David Wise, who was the original writer on that series. They're talking about making some of these transitions.
Most toy guys would realize from day one that you've got to sell multiple characters, figures, and if they look identical or similar, that's going to be tough to do.
It's probably the only limitation of Turtles I can think of. It's perfect in every other respect. It's unique, it's exciting. A turtle is a turtle. Yeah.
So from day one, I think he realized, even in the graphic novels where they all had red bandanas, that there had to be more differentiation of the turtles.
If you have four characters, especially four characters who look alike, you want to give them distinct personalities. Now, only in the comic, the only way you could tell them apart was by what weapon they were carrying.
Now, that ended up being done with color more than anything else. So the bandana colors, the pad colors, and the skin colors. And then the added initial on the belt buckle was just a way to reinforce that. And the whole idea was that you could immediately tell the difference between the turtles by looking at the figures, whether they were in the package or not.
So that'll help Sam Hatch understand why they don't all have red bandanas anymore. Jim Lawson, I mean, you're sort of in a unique position. I mean, on the one hand, you were part of this early team of artists creating this exciting product, and then you watch the product board a big ocean liner and kind of head out into the biggest possible ocean of mass culture. Was there any part of you that was kind of going, oh, bye-bye, you'll never be the same again?
There was. What Sam said just a little while ago was like a lot of people weren't even aware that there was a comic book, and that's one of the things I think we struggled with. I struggled with is as everything else was kind of going crazy and exploding. The comic book struggled to sell at times, and the black and white book. That's basically where it all stemmed from.
And so, Randall Lopp, one of the things that has become clear to me, and I said this sort of before we got on the air with all this, I'm demographically kind of in a Turtle Valley in the sense that although I was a comic book nerd, but I was a little bit too old to sort of catch the wave of the Mutant Ninja Turtles. And then, the other way you do this is through your kids. My son was born in 1989. He went straight to the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. God help us all.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, so not as sorry as I was. But sort of even just going to school on it for this show, one of the things that occurred to me is they are very, on the one hand, they are absolutely resolutely who you are. If you're a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, you live in the sewer, you have a rat for a sensei. I mean, that's not going to change that much. But really within that rubric, there's an awful lot of changing that goes on. So even watching the 2014 movie, I was saying to Jim before we went on the air, they're kind of more African-American than I've ever seen them be. I mean, you can sort of change, they have those, rigid personality types to a certain degree. One is one thing. I mean, Donatello is kind of the scholarly nerd. Mikey is the fun-loving one. But they also, they mutate even for mutants. They mutate a lot, right?
Oh, they do. And one of the things that, people keep asking me now, why do you think they've lasted 30 years? And you hit on one of the things here is this, in each iteration, they retain the essence or the aspect that is what separates them from other titles, obviously, and makes them interesting and fun and all that. But also there are all these attachments for other elements. So, David Wise in the documentary says he made their dialogue more street, and everybody knows what that means or what it meant back then. It's to try and make them more African-American in flavor that was linked to b-boy culture or early hip-hop, however you want to word it. And I think that's awesome. I like things that do that. I like the drift across these different iterations. And so, when you mention, you see the new movie and there are changes, well, some people find that an affront, but other people look at it, I look at it and I say, it's interesting to me to see how much that can vary. The play in the franchise is very appealing from an outside perspective and observing it.
I actually do think one of the nice things, one of the kind of clever little throwaways in the movie is when you're seeing a little bit of their origin story, there's one point where they're peeping up through a storm sewer grate onto the street, and somehow or other they're seeing Gwen Stefani do Holla Back Girl. And you realize, well, the joke here is the characters are absorbing the culture of the moment. And so they're becoming more like the moment that they're in right now, which I kind of think is nicely done. Let me just sort of grab a call here from, this is from Sarah in Manchester. I like the point she's about to make here, but maybe we won't like this point. I don't know. Sarah, are you there?
Yes, but you don't know my point. Well, first of all, let me just say I am a long-time caller, but I seldom listen. But today it is an important topic, and I don't mean to come off as like snarky or like I'm trolling you guys, but I am trying so hard as a woman to understand what the appeal of like child toys are to grown men. Yeah, I would like to make a movie about my Easy Bake Oven or my Shrinky Dinks but they would be children's movies. They wouldn't get a big budget and a PG-13 rating. And I've seen grown men, members of my own family, go to these movies and pay money and then come home and be like, oh, it was actually pretty cool. So,
oh boy.
I know I sound like I'm just, but as a female, I don't think there would be a market for, like a real serious Barbie movie. I wasn't a Barbie girl, but you
Well,
know.
yeah, my first question for you, Sarah, is have you actually trademarked Easy Bake Oven the movie? Because if not, we might be actually kind of interested in that.
Yeah, see, and I would do it like it would be good. It would be like the oven would have to take on some kind of mutant aliens or something.
Yeah, no, the oven would bake stuff that would. I don't know. We have to have some story meetings about this. So please talk to my people. Well, it's a great question. It's a snarky question, but it's a great question. It's a question that we will pause and digest, and we'll come back after this break, and it'll be the first thing we do.
We all begin changing, our size was all rearranging. It led us to discover the kind of food that we like best. Come around. It isn't burgers or french fries that work for turtles of our size. Ice cream, cake, or apple pie. They don't even pass the test, dude. One piece of power.
So far, not much interest in my graduated from college living in their parents' basement allergic to foam insulation Bikram Yoga Frogs project. Webbed fingers crossed. Today's show was produced by Katie Tolarski, Betsy Kaplan, and me. Greg Hill appeared in the intro and tweets for us at WNPR Colin. The part of Bill Curry was played by Megan Fox. For show pages, articles, and videos of the Faith Middleton Show staff cutting in line in front of Michelangelo at Sally's Pizza, visit our website, WNPR.org. On tomorrow's show, The Nose takes a breather, and we bring back an amazing show in which we imagine a life with no language. And now, back to Colin.
Yeah, this is really, of all the shows we've done this year, it's the hardest one to describe, and I won't even try right now. But it did start with this notion based on a novel that's out right now. What if you had no capacity for language? You couldn't learn sign language, you couldn't learn anything. And then we found out that there really were people who'd studied that exact phenomenon. So by the time we were done with this show, we had blown our own minds. So we're going to run this show again tomorrow while I'm on my way up to Maine. So we're talking right now to Jim Lawson, Randall Lobb, and Sam Hatch. We're talking about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Randall Lobb, I'm going to sort of come back to you because, I mean, in a way, I think Sarah's kind of asking a great question. You know, St. Paul says, when I became a man, I put away childish things, except that we don't really do that, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know. How did you react to her idea? Why can't men give up their toys and move on?
Well, I mean, there's a fallacy here, ad hominem in a way. What she's assuming is that the interesting aspect of the story, say, for example, the documentary I did, is the toys. But I would point at the person who I think is in your studio there and say that he's a person. And that's what's interesting about the story, is what people do. So there's a line in the documentary, Fred Wolf says, I'm pretty sure I can make an animated series about just about anything. And I would say I could make a documentary about just about anything as long as there are human beings doing it, because what you have is a human story about people who do something. And after we had a screening at Paramount, kind of a tech screening, one of the guys who's in Q&A came over to me and he said, or QC rather, sorry, came over to me and said, you really put the heart in here. And my comment back was, I didn't have to. That's in there because we're talking about what people do. So she's right to some degree. People who play with toys, maybe, but people who are interested in what, you know, these, I don't want to say franchises every time, but these beloved cultural nuggets or these memes, whatever you want to call them, these things have a resonance that's interesting. It's tied to our psychology, and, you know, we could talk about Carl Jung for a while, and maybe that would elevate it to a place where your caller finds, oh, I see what they're doing.
I think also, Jim, I'm going to direct this at you for a second, but I was saying to you before we went on the air, like yesterday I had a really hard day, and we did a show about suicide that was very disturbing. Wow. Before that, I'd done a show about politics earlier in the morning, which was disturbing in a different way. I had to write a newspaper column. I had a meeting over at Watkinson School about some forums that we're doing. I was exhausted, and I went to this movie, and I sat down, and I understand it's not Citizen Kane, but I went, and there were, first of all, these 4 people who were going to maybe even rescue me if I got in trouble. They weren't people, they were turtles, but they were rescuing me if I got in trouble, and meanwhile they were very busy entertaining me, and maybe that's a big, I mean, there's a reason it's called escapist culture, right? I mean, to me that was the gift I was given last night.
Yeah, I don't. Somehow this idea, this intellectual property, these characters, they resonated with people, and I haven't worked for any other, you know, I haven't worked with Batman or whatever, but somehow these guys, I don't know if it's the brothers that they were or the family situation that they were in with Splinter, you know, their sensei, their father. But something really connected and spoke to people about these guys. There's a heart. There's the fatherly figure. He's very noble. The brothers looking out for each other. It's crazy, but I see that. I don't go to shows often anymore, but occasionally I still do. And people always come up to me and tell me that there was something there.
Sam, to me, Sarah's sort of talking about sort of why don't we put away our toys. It's not so much about the putting away the toys, but I think there is this, if you like any kind of fantasy, whether it's Game of Thrones, which is about as adult as this gets, or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which is maybe in a different place on the spectrum, there is still this idea, wouldn't it be cool if there was a little bit more to the world than the thing that we see all the time?
Absolutely. And it's funny, speaking of the toys, I just had a surreal moment about a month ago. I sold off my lifelong Star Wars collection. And while packing it all up...
Yeah, Patrick Scahill paid a lot of money for that. By the way.
I know. I hope he enjoys them. Yeah. That AT-AT has his name right on it. But as I was packing it up, I was actually watching the People versus George Lucas movie on Amazon Prime and had this strange little kind of postmodern moment where I was getting rid of this stuff. But at the same time, as I'm moving on beyond my toys, I still have these old Turtles reprints of the covers and things like that. So I don't think I can ever quite move on fully from a story or something that hit me, as a kid. And the interesting thing about Turtles is that that was always the element that was meant to draw your eye, even on the cover. The logo has turtles and huge, but as Jim was saying, it was more the teenage element, the brother element, and of course the wisecracking and the ninja fighting and all that. But it was the characters that really hooked me.
Randall, one of the moments in your movie that I found very surprising, partly because I've worked with him a couple of times now, and I know him, therefore I don't know him. I know him a little tiny bit. Michael Ian Black, it turns out, was for a while a guy who was touring around in a turtle suit and doing these sort of public appearances in this very cumbersome turtle suit with a robotic head. But he describes this trip to Mexico where, he and some other guy got dispatched over there as kind of an offshoot for this tour, and they're in Juarez, I think, and they're up on a roof because there are so many thousands and thousands of little Mexican kids there. And he talks about it being also as being kind of a cultural moment and a moment about inequality. These children who loved this thing but didn't have the kind of access to it that American children do. But it also reminds you that, the main thing this thing does is make you happy for a while.
I think that's very clear that we enjoy things that make us happy, and well should we, right? These kids, he mentions that it told him something sort of cultural, or the divide in culture, and it didn't matter about what kind of socioeconomic or cultural or ethnic or whatever divide you want to say, they're reacting to that aspect of it, that fun is important.
We could get a tweet from Nick saying each character represented a friend you had on the playground. That's why it was so great.
Sure.
That's a very keen observation.
That's
there.
Good.
Sam, this is like a 4-hour question for you, but I'm just going to ask it really quickly. How much of culture that you see right now owes something to this? I don't know. Would there be a raccoon in Guardians of the Galaxy? Would there be League of Legends having 45,000 people pack into an arena to watch God knows whatever that is? How much do you think kind of grew out of this?
It's hard to even gauge because just from the comics industry, the impact it had. Rocket Raccoon, the comics character I was introduced to after getting hooked on the Turtles comics, and I tripped across him at Buried Under in Manchester. One thing always does tend to lead to another, and having these anthropomorphic do-gooders definitely paves the way and allows you to go and enjoy a film with a talking tree and a talking raccoon, and take it for face value and just let it entertain you.
Jim Lawson, I can let you take that one for about 20-25 seconds too. Do you see spillovers into modern culture from the work that you were doing there in the mid-1980s?
Yeah. Boy, that's a tough question. Immediately afterwards, the Turtles came on right at the beginning of kind of this black and white comic book explosion. I think there were a few others. Cerebus was probably right at that time. Usagi Yojimbo, those are the ones I'm most familiar with.
Definitely.
And then, I can remember the Turtles came out and there was like, what was it, green geriatric jujitsu gerbils or something.
I
And
remember adolescent radioactive black belt hamsters.
Yeah.
All right, you guys are heading into geek territory here, I can tell. All right, and we're going to have to wrap things up. We've got a very busy afternoon. We've got to get the one sheet for the Easy Bake Oven movie out to Hollywood. Jim and Sam and I are going to be very busy. Thanks very much to Randall Lobb. His documentary, which if you love the Turtles, believe me, there's so many things you don't know. Turtle Power, the definitive history of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Listen to our show tomorrow. If you didn't hear it the first time, it will blow your mind.
All right, miss. Describe the men who saved your life.
They were 5'2", maybe, giant turtles. They had different weapons, but they were wearing masks.
Masks? Then we'll never figure out who they are.